3. The Madness from the Sea.
If heaven ever wishes to grant me a boon, it will be a total effacing of the results of a mere chance which fixed my eye on a certain stray piece of shelf paper. It was nothing on which I would naturally have stumbled in the course of my daily round, for it was an old number of an Australian journal, the Sydney Bulletin, for April 18th, 1925. It had escaped even the cutting bureau, which had at the time of its issuance been avidly collecting material for my uncle's research. I had largely given over my inquiries into what Professor Angle called the Cthulhu cult, and was visiting a learned friend in Paterson, New Jersey, the curator of a local museum and a mineralogist of note.
What do you think of these specimens, Francis?
Quite the collection, my friend. No soapy green black stone, as it were.
What was that?
Oh, nothing, truly. Wait. Forgive me, This article...
I believe it's a cutting from the Sydney Bulletin.
My, you do have wide affiliations in all conceivable foreign parts.
I suppose so. But why is that of interest of you, my friend?
It's just... about something I have been extensively researching on. The picture in the article was a half-tone cut of a hideous stone image almost identical with that which Legrasse had found in the swamp. Eagerly clearing the sheet of its precious contents, I scanned the item in detail, and was disappointed to find it of only moderate length. What it suggested, however, was of portentous significance to my flagging quest, and I carefully tore it out for immediate action. It read as follows.
Mystery derelict found at sea. Vigilant arrives with helpless armed New Zealand yacht in tow. One survivor and dead man found aboard. Tale of desperate battle and deaths at sea. Rescued seaman refuses particulars of strange experience. Odd idol found in his possession. Inquiry to follow. The Morrison Co's freighter Vigilant, bound from Valparaiso, arrived this morning at its wharf in Darling Harbour, having in tow the battled and disabled but heavily armed steam yacht Alert of Dunedin, New Zealand, which was sighted April 12th in south latitude 34 degrees 21, west longitude 152 degrees 17, with one living and one dead man aboard. The Vigilant left Valparaiso March 25th, and on April 2nd was driven considerably south of her course by exceptionally heavy storms and monster waves. On April 12th, the derelict was sighted, and though apparently deserted, was found upon boarding to contain one survivor in a half-delirious condition and one man who had evidently been dead for more than a week. The living man was clutching a horrible stone idol of unknown origin, about a foot in height, regarding whose nature authorities at Sydney University, the Royal Society, and the museum in College Street all profess complete bafflement, and which the survivor says he found in the cabin of the yacht in a small carved shrine of common pattern. This man, after recovering his senses, told an exceedingly strange story of piracy and slaughter. He is Gustav Johansen, a Norwegian of some intelligence, and had been second mate of the two-masted schooner Emma of Auckland, which sailed for Callao February 20th with a complement of 11 men. The Emma, he says, was delayed and thrown widely south of her course by the great storm of March 1st, and on March 22nd in south latitude 49 degrees 51, west longitude 128 degrees 34, encountered the Alert, manned by a queer and evil-looking crew of Kanakas and half-castes. Being ordered peremptorily to turn back, Captain Collins refused, whereupon the strange crew began to fire savagely, and without warning, upon the schooner, with a peculiarly heavy battery of brass cannon forming part of the yacht's equipment. The Emma's men showed fight, says the survivor, and though the schooner began to sink from shots beneath the waterline, they managed to heave alongside their enemy and board her, grappling with the savage crew on the yacht's deck, and being forced to kill them all, the number being slightly superior because of their particularly abhorrent and desperate, though rather clumsy, mode of fighting. 3 of the Emma's men, including Captain Collins and First Mate Green, were killed, and the remaining 8 under Second Mate Johansen proceeded to navigate the captured yacht, going ahead in their original direction to see if any reason for their ordering back had existed. The next day, it appears, they raised and landed on a small island, although none is known to exist in that part of the ocean, and 6 of the men somehow died ashore. though Johansen is clearly reticent about this part of his story and speaks only of their falling into a rock chasm. Later, it seems he and one companion boarded the yacht and tried to manage her, but were beaten about by the storm of April 2nd. From that time till his rescue on the 12th, the man remembers little, and he does not even recall when William Bryden, his companion, died. Bryden's death reveals no apparent cause and was probably due to excitement or exposure. Cable advisors from Dunedin report that the Alert was well known there as an island trader and bore an evil reputation along the waterfront. It was owned by a curious group of half-castes whose frequent meetings and night trips to the woods attracted no little curiosity. And it had set sail in great haste just after the storm and earth tremors of March 1st. Our Auckland correspondent gives the Emma and her crew an excellent reputation, and Johansen is described as a sober and worthy man. The Admiralty will institute an inquiry on the whole matter beginning tomorrow, at which every effort will be made to induce Johansen to speak more freely than he has done hitherto.
This was all, together with the picture of the hellish image. But what a train of ideas it started in my mind. Here were new treasuries of data on the Cthulhu cult, and evidence that it had had strange interests at sea, as well as on land. What motive prompted the hybrid crew to order back the Emma as they sailed about with their hideous idol? What was the unknown island on which 6 of the Emma's crew had died, and about which the mate Johansen was so secretive? What had the Vice Admiralty's investigation brought out, and what was known of the noxious cult in Dunedin? And most marvelous of all, what deep and more than natural linkage of dates was this which gave a malign and now undeniable significance to the various turns of events so carefully noted by my uncle? March 1st, or February 28th according to the international dateline, the earthquake and storm had come. From Dunedin, the Alert and her noisome crew had darted eagerly forth as if imperiously summoned. And on the other side of the earth, poets and artists had begun to dream of a strange, dank, cyclopean city, whilst a young sculptor had molded in his sleep the form of the dreaded Cthulhu. March 23rd, the crew of the Emma had landed on an unknown island and left 6 men dead. And on that date, the dreams of sensitive men assumed a heightened vividness, and darkened with dread of a giant monster's malign pursuit, whilst an architect had gone mad, and a sculptor had lapsed suddenly into delirium. And what of this storm on April 2nd, the date on which all dreams of this dank city ceased, and Wilcox emerged unharmed from the bondage of a strange fever? What of all this, and of those hints of old Castro about the sunken starborn old ones and their coming reign, their faithful cult and their mastery of dreams? Was I tottering on the brink of cosmic horrors beyond man's power to bear? If so, they must be horrors of the mind alone, for in some way the 2nd of April had put a stop to whatever monstrous menace had begun its siege of mankind's soul. That evening, after a day of hurried cabling and arranging, I bade my host adieu and took a train for San Francisco. In less than a month, I was in Dunedin, where, however, I found that little was known of the strange cult members who had lingered in the old sea taverns. Waterfront scum was far too common for special mention, though there was vague talk about one inland trip these men had made, during which faint drumming and red flame were noted on the distant hills. In Auckland, I learned that Johansen had returned.
Returned with yellow hair turned white, he did, after they questioned him in Sydney. Nothing came out of that query. It was pure formality anyway. And Johansen sold his cottage in West Street and sailed with his wife back to his old home in Oslo, they tell me.
Did he tell you about his experience?
Nah, did not tell me nor anyone else more than he told the Admiralty officials. I'm sorry, that's all I know.
Do you happen to have his Oslo address? After that, I went to Sydney and talked profitlessly with seamen and members of the Vice Admiralty Court. I saw the Alert, now sold and in commercial use at Circular Quay and Sydney Cove, but gained nothing from its noncommittal bulk. The crouching image with its cuttlefish head, dragon body, scaly wings, and hieroglyphed pedestal was preserved in the museum at Hyde Park, and I studied it long and well, finding it a thing of balefully exquisite workmanship, and with the same utter mystery, terrible antiquity, and unearthly strangeness of material which I had noted in Legras's smaller specimen. Geologists, the curator told me, had found it a monstrous puzzle, for they vowed that the world held no rock like it. Then I thought with a shudder of what old Castro had told Legrasse about the primal Great Ones.
They came from the stars and brought their images with them.
Shaken with such a mental revolution as I had never before known, I now resolved to visit mate Johansen in Oslo. Sailing for London, I re-embarked at once for the Norwegian capital, and one autumn day landed at the trim wharves in the shadow of the Egeberg. Johansen's address, I discovered, lay in the old town of King Harald Hardrada, which kept alive the name of Oslo during all the centuries that the greatest city masqueraded as Christiana. I made the brief trip by taxicab, and knocked with a palpitant heart at the door of a neat and ancient building with plastered front.
Yeah?
Excuse me, ma'am. Do you speak English?
A little. Who are you?
Francis Wayland Thurston, ma'am. Is your husband home? I need to confer with him.
I am sorry, Mr. Thurston. My Gustav is dead.
Oh. My condolences, ma'am.
Did you know him?
Yes, sort of. I have connections with the Admiralty. I was just hoping to talk about his experiences on the Alert.
Come in. He was not the same man that left. What he did in 1925 broke him.
Has he told you what happened exactly?
No, nothing. He only left a manuscript of, technical matters, he said. I tried reading, but he wrote in English, and I can't read that.
I see. How did he die?
The strangest thing. He went on a walk near Gothenburg dock, and a bundle of papers fell from a window very high. An attic window. 2 Lashkar sailors helped them up, but he was dead before the ambulance came. The doctors said he had heart trouble. Weakened constitution. We never knew.
I am deeply sorry. Ma'am, could I possibly see this manuscript your husband left? I bore the document away and began to read it on the London boat. As I recount it, I hope it will show why the sound of the water against the vessel's sides became so unendurable to me that I stopped my ears with cotton. As for me, I shall never sleep calmly again when I think of the horrors that lurk ceaselessly behind life in time and in space, and of those unhallowed blasphemies from elder stars which dream beneath the sea, known and favored by a nightmare cult, ready and eager to loose them on the world whenever another earthquake shall heave their monstrous stone city again to the sun and air. Johansen's voyage had begun just as he told it to the Vice Admiralty.
The Emma, in ballast, had cleared Auckland on February 20th, and had felt the full force of that earthquake-born tempest, which must have heaved up from the sea bottoms, the horrors that fill my dreams. Once more under control, the ship was making good progress when held up by the Alert on March 22nd. Those men, there was some peculiarly abominable quality about them which made their destruction seem almost a duty, and I still sincerely wonder at the ruthlessness brought against my party. I equally mourn the death of Collins, Green, and Palmer, and the sinking of our Emma. What a waste of good men. What a waste of a good schooner. And for what? Then, driven ahead by curiosity and our captured yacht, we sighted the great stone pillar sticking out of the sea, and in south latitude 47 degrees 9 minutes, west longitude 126 degrees 43 minutes, come upon a coastline of mingled mud, ooze and weedy cyclopean masonry, which I now know to be nothing less than the tangible substance of Earth's supreme terror. The nightmare corpse city of Relier, built in measureless eons behind history by the vast, loathsome shapes that seeped down from the dark stars. There lay great Cthulhu and his hordes, hidden in slimy vaults and sending out at last, after cycles incalculable, the thoughts that spread fear into the dreams of the sensitive and called imperiously to the faithful to come on a pilgrimage of liberation and restoration. All this I did not suspect, but God knows I soon saw enough. I suppose that only a single mountaintop, the hideous monolith-crowned citadel, whereon great Cthulhu was buried, actually emerged from the waters. When I think of the extent of all that may be brooding down there, I almost wish to kill myself forthwith. Me and my men were awed by the cosmic majesty of this dripping Babylon of elder daemons, and knew that it was nothing of this or of any sane planet. I cannot describe our awe at the unbelievable size of the greenish stone blocks, at the dizzying height of the great carven monolith, and at the stupefying identity of the colossal statues and bas-reliefs with the queer image found in the shrine on the Alert. I speak of its architecture, but I can truly dwell only on broad impressions of vast angles and stone surfaces too great to belong to anything right or proper for this earth, and impious with horrible images and hieroglyphs. The geometry of that place was abnormal, impossible. My head hurt just by trying to make sense of it. We landed at a sloping mud bank on this monstrous acropolis. And clambered slipperily up over titan oozy blocks which could have been no mortal staircase. The very sun of heaven seemed distorted when viewed through the polarizing miasma welling out of this sea-soaked perversion, and twisted menace and suspense lurked leeringly in those crazily elusive angles of carven rock, where a second glance showed concavity after the first showed convexity. Something very like fright had come over all of us explorers, before anything more definite than rock and ooze and weed was seen. Each would have fled had he not feared the scorn of the others, and it was only half-heartedly that we searched, vainly as it proved, for some portable souvenir to bear away. It was Rodriguez de Portuguese who climbed up the foot of the monolith and shouted of what he had found. The rest of us followed him and looked curiously at the immense carved door bearing a dread squid dragon bas relief. It was like a great barn door, and we all felt that it was a door because of the ornate lintel, threshold, and gems around it, though we could not decide whether it lay flat like a trapdoor or slantwise like an outside cellar door. As I said, the geometry of that place was all wrong. One could not be sure that the sea and the ground were horizontal, hence the relative position of everything else seemed phantasmally variable. Bryden pushed at the stone in several places without result. Then Donovan fell over it delicately around the edge, pressing each point separately as he went. He climbed interminably around the grotesque stone molding. That is, one would call it climbing if the thing was not after all horizontal. And the men wondered how any door in the universe could be so vast. Then, very softly and slowly, the acre-great panel began to give inward at the top, and they saw that it was balanced. Donovan slid or somehow propelled himself down or along the jamb and rejoined his fellows, and everyone watched the queer recession of the monstrously carven portal. In this fantasy of prismatic distortion, it moved anomalously in a diagonal way, so that all the rules of matter and perspective seemed upset. The aperture was black, with darkness almost material. That tenebrousness was indeed a positive quality, for it obscured such parts of the inner walls as ought to have been revealed, and actually burst forth like smoke from its aeon-long imprisonment, visibly darkening the sun as it slunk away into the shrunken and gibbous sky on flapping membranous wings. The odor arising from the newly opened depths was intolerable, and at length the quick-eared Hawkins thought he heard a nasty, slopping sound down there.
Quiet! What's that now?
Everyone listened, and everyone was listening still, when it lumbered slobberingly into sight and gropingly squeezed its gelatinous green immensity through the black doorway into the tainted outside air of that poisoned city of madness. My hand grows almost too shaky to write as I remember. Of the 6 men who never reached the ship, I think 2 perished of pure fright in that accursed instant. The thing cannot be described. There is no language for such abysms of shrieking and immemorial lunacy, such eldritch contradictions of all matter, force, and cosmic order. A mountain walked or stumbled. God, the thing of the idol, the green sticky spawn of the stars, had awaked to claim his own. The stars were right again, and what an age-old cult had failed to do by design, a band of innocent sailors had done by accident. After vigintillions of years, great Cthulhu was loose again, and a ravening for delight. 3 men were swept up by the flabby claws before anybody turned. God rest them if there be any rest in the universe. They were Donovan, Guerrera, and Angstrom. Parker slipped as the other 3 were plunging frenziedly over endless vistas of green-crested rock to the boat, and I swear he was swallowed up by an angle of masonry which shouldn't have been there, an angle which was acute but behaved as if it were obtuse. So only Bryden and I reached the boat and pulled desperately for the alert. As the mountainous monstrosity flopped down the slimy stones and hesitated, floundering at the edge of the water. Steam had not been suffered to go down entirely, despite the departure of all hands for the shore. And it was the work of only a few moments of feverish rushing up and down between wheel and engines to get the alert underway. Slowly, amidst the distorted horrors of that indescribable scene, she began to churn the lethal waters, whilst on the masonry of that charnel shore that was not of earth, the titan thing from the stars, slavered and gibbered like Polypheme, cursing the fleeing ship of Odysseus. Then, bolder than the storied Cyclops, the great Cthulhu slid greasily into the water and began to pursue with vast wave-raising strokes of cosmic potency. Bryden looked back and went mad, laughing shrilly as he kept on laughing at intervals, till death found him one night in the cabin whilst I was wandering deliriously. But I had not given out yet. Knowing that the thing could surely overtake the alert until steam was fully up, I resolved on a desperate chance, and setting the engine for full speed, ran lightning-like on deck and reversed the wheel. There was a mighty eddying and foaming in the noisome brine, and as the steam mounted higher and higher, I drove my vessel head-on against the pursuing jelly, which rose above the unclean froth like a stern of a daemon galleon. The awful squid head with riding feelers came nearly up to the bowsprit of the sturdy yacht, and I drove on relentlessly. There was a bursting as of an exploding bladder, a slushy nastiness as of a cloven sunfish, a stench as of 1,000 open graves, and a sound I will not put on paper. For an instant, the ship was befouled by an acrid and blinding green cloud. And then there was only a venomous seething astern, where, God in heaven, the scattered plasticity of that nameless sky spawn was nebulously recombining its hateful original form, whilst its distance widened every second as the alert gained impetus from its mounting steam. That was all. After that, I only brooded over the idol in the cabin, and attended to a few matters of food for myself and the laughing maniac by my side. I did not try to navigate after the first bold flight, for the reaction had taken something out of my soul. Then came the storm of April 2nd, the gathering of clouds about my consciousness. There is a sense of spectral whirling through liquid gulfs of infinity, of dizzying rides through reeling universes on a comet's tail, and of hysterical plunges from the pit to the moon, and from the moon back again to the pit, all livened by a cachinnating chorus of distorted, hilarious elder gods, and the green, bat-winged, mocking imps of Tartarus. Out of that dream came rescue, the Vigilant, the Vice Admiralty Court, the streets of Dunedin, and a long voyage back home to my old house by the Eggeberg. I cannot tell anyone. They would think me mad. I wrote of what I know before death comes, but my wife must not guess. Death would be a boon if it only could blot out the memories.
That was the document I read. And now I have placed it in the tin box beside the bas relief in the papers of Professor Engel. With it shall go this record of mine, this test of my own sanity, wherein is pieced together that which I hope may never be pieced together again. I have looked upon all that the universe has to hold of horror, and even the skies of spring and the flowers of summer must ever afterward be poison to me. But I do not think my life will be long. As my uncle went, as poor Johansen went, so I shall go. I know too much, and the cult still lives. Cthulhu still lives too, I suppose, again in that chasm of stone which has shielded him since the sun was young. His accursed city is sunken once more, for the Vigilant sailed over the spot after the April storm. But his ministers on earth still bellow and prance and slay around idol-capped monoliths in lonely places. He must have been trapped by the sinking whilst within his black abyss, or else the world would by now be screaming with fright and frenzy. Who knows the end? What has risen may sink, and what has sunk may rise. Loathsomeness waits and dreams in the deep, and decay spreads over the tottering cities of men. A time will come, but I must not and cannot think. Let me pray that, if I do not survive this manuscript, my executors may put caution before audacity, and see that it meets no other eye.
Poor Francis. Knowledge is not always power, as it turns out. Sometimes it's a death knell. Thank you all for tuning in to listen, creatures. We sincerely hope that this free partner special was to your taste, and that you'll join us again. One thing before you go. While we might have our own plans here at Black Market Voices, we are also open for requests. If there is a story that you'd like to listen to, here in the dark with me, don't be afraid to suggest it at the email address provided in the description below. And should you feel so inclined, please toss a coin in the coffee also provided. All proceeds go to an equipment fund for our actors and artists. Once more, thank you for joining me tonight, and I hope to see you again very soon. Until then, be careful of the